Welcome to the Take Action podcast, where we empower communication partners to feel confident with AAC. I am Lauren Greenleaf, a certified speech-language pathologist with nearly a decade of experience in AAC. Join us weekly as we dive into all of the aspects of AAC and hear from communication partners just like you who are successfully integrating AAC into their daily lives. Whether you are an SLP, a parent, an educator, or any other communication partner, you are absolutely in the right place if you are ready to take actionable steps towards AAC success today. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Take Action podcast. This week, I am here with Laura, who is a mom to an AAC user. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's great to be here.
Yes, I am so excited to chat. We have been chatting on Instagram for a really long time, so it's nice to finally have it happen in somewhat real life virtually. And we were just saying before the show, you're actually the third Laura that I've had on in less than 18 episodes, which is pretty cool. So the Laura and Lauren duos are out in the world.
Perfect.
I love it. All right. So why don't you go ahead and start by telling us a little bit about yourself and then your family's journey with AAC?
Perfect. So I'm the parent of Ethan. He's autistic. He's non-speaking. He's 5 in October, and he's sort of the happiest child you'll meet. You know, he has a great sense of humor, and he communicates in sort of various ways. So he communicates things like sort of hand leading and body language. I'm sure as many parents of non-speaking children, we're very in tune to kind of a set noise or a set look, and we'll know that he wants something to eat. He also uses sort of Makaton and sign language. And very recently, the past sort of 5 or 6 months or so, he now uses AAC. That was recommended to us via a private speech therapist that we've just started seeing. And AAC has just been absolutely incredible for all of us. And it truly has sort of given Ethan a voice. And it's just wild, really, how quickly it's become such a huge part of our life. You know, the idea now of accidentally not charging it overnight or something and him not having it, even just for like half an hour, like, I don't know what we do, you know, like we rely on it so much, and Ethan relies on it. And it truly is his voice, really.
That's really, really cool. And I love how immersed you have become in it. Like you said, it's only been a few months, but you are immersed in it. And even a half hour without it makes a really big difference in your life. 2 things I wanted to follow up on. Can you explain to anybody who doesn't know what Makaton sign language is?
Yeah, so Makaton...
It's not really a U.S. term. So, I mean,
No.
Some people know it, but not really.
Yeah, so Makaton isn't sign language. Makaton is where you sign sort of key words.
Okay.
So, for example, and this does actually happen, if I'm saying to Ethan, can you open the door to let our cat in, I'll just sign open the door and cat. So he'll hear the 2 key words, and then he'll be able to act on it. How Ethan mainly uses it is more unfinished, which has been incredible because we can, you know, he can be on a swing and we can say, do you want more or are you finished? And he'll use our hands and tell us, which has been amazing. Obviously now we can use the AAC for that as well. But all communication sort of supports all communication, really. It's sort of, we are a kind of total communication household, really.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And you are not US based. You are in Britain.
Yeah.
UK. And I know that AAC is not as easily accessible over there. At least that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Do you have any experience with that? I mean, I know your private therapist recommended it.
Yeah.
So was it an easy process for you guys to get that AAC device?
Yes, because and obviously I'm not up to speed with how it works in
That's okay.
in America, but I think because in America you have all the insurance things.
Yes.
I think it can be more complicated for us. And actually, this is something that I try and kind of share on my Instagram. Ethan's grandma gave us her sort of old iPad, and we downloaded TD Snap, and then we had AAC. You know, that's all we did. And so obviously people have to have an iPad. They have to pay for the app. But once that's done, you know, Ethan's got an AAC now, you know, and we've got a sturdy case, we've got a strap on it so we can take it everywhere. But actually, in terms of getting it, I think, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but there's so many myths around AAC. And I think people think, I can't get it. A speech therapist has said we can't have it, or they don't even know what one is or whatever. Like, you can get it yourself. You know, you can have an iPad, and I think you can buy like used iPads. Yeah, and as I said, we use TD Snap. And kind of on that note, actually, and when you said at the start, you love kind of how immersed we've got in it.
Yes.
I just wanted to share, just for anyone that might be listening, that actually we did try AAC probably sort of 18 months ago. And we used a different app, which may or not have been right for Ethan. You know, we don't know, but we were in a very different headspace. We were fighting for school places, for Ethan's diagnosis. We weren't mentally and physically and every way, we weren't ready to introduce a new language and such a huge commitment into our life. We did it then at a time when we were ready. And I think that's why we've been able to, my brain, I do go all into things, but that's why we were kind of able to.
Oh my goodness. I'm so happy you shared that, because we have talked with a few speech therapists in the past on the podcast, and I've talked to so many too about how that mindset piece alone can make or break how well something goes. So just even you sharing that really kind of highlights how important that is. Like, as a parent, you really do need to be in the right headspace to be able to commit to it. And if you're not, it's going to be so much more difficult and laborsome, and it just might not be successful.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't need something else to sort of beat yourself up with or feel like you're not doing enough. So sort of actually, if now isn't the right time, you know, wait till the kind of right time arrives, and you'll be so much more successcess. And I also have always really known that AAC will be part of Ethan's life. You know, as I said, he's completely non-speaking. He's an absolute whiz on YouTube and technology. I'd seen AAC actually, you know, from obviously the wonderful power of Instagram. I follow Channing at Channing's Joy, obviously the incredible charity that I think you've mentioned on this podcast, haven't you?
Yes,
And I sort of have seen Channing using it, and sort of, you know, you just see something and you think that's going to be part of our life, sort of thing. So it's, I've always known it will be part of our life, and now it is.
Yeah, and that's really cool. And I think too, the piece that you were never leaving Ethan without some form of communication. You mentioned you guys are a total communication family. So even though it wasn't the right time for high-tech AAC, you were still using other things to support it, support that communication piece. And I think that's the key to high-tech AAC, maybe the goal and maybe what we really, really want to use. But if it's not the right time for it, that's okay, as long as we're providing other ways to support that communication.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit. I know you guys have had it for a few months. I like to start with the challenges and then move to the really positive things. So what has been some of the biggest obstacles and hurdles and challenges you guys have had to face with implementing AAC into your life?
Yeah, so I think, and I've sort of kind of mentioned it already, but I think just the huge commitment you have to give to it, the huge undertaking, you know, it's literally that to us, it's like learning a whole new language. So it's like we wanted to learn German, and we were, you know, that's a huge thing. So we're having to kind of implement it and model and do everything we can at home, obviously, while also just living our general chaotic, busy life, which I'm sure everybody is living.
Yeah.
So, and I've got some sort of tips hopefully later on that I'll share, which I think will help you be able to make AAC kind of part of your life, but just that huge thing. And I always feel like I want to be doing more or should be doing more. So I can sort of beat myself up a bit about it. But yeah, just that commitment really. But then also, and as you've mentioned, I think AAC isn't quite so sort of widely known in the UK. So, and obviously in some areas, obviously when we're with our wonderful speech and language therapists and you're having all these great neuroaffirming conversations, and then you kind of leave that bubble, and, you know, it's shocking really how little is known about AAC. And I sometimes think, well, I'm going to need to go in and dispel all the myths, but actually they don't even know what AAC is to have to know the myths, sort of thing. Like it's so new. Well, it's not new, but it's people don't know about it. And actually there's still the myths of sort of, oh, they need to be able to use the picture cards first, or all the other kids will want it, or whatever. There's all these kind of slightly strange things that can kind of get said. And, you know, we're working. So Ethan goes to a specialist school, and AAC is completely new to them. But he's got a wonderful teacher, wonderful teaching assistants. We've had a meeting with them to just kind of share our knowledge. And they're kind of totally on board, and they can get training and everything else. So that's kind of all we can ask for. But the people don't know about it. And actually, I think even if they do know about it, they might have slightly strange opinions on it. So I think I would say that actually when it's part of your life, you then naturally have to become a sort of AAC advocate, really, because you will hear, oh, that's screen time, or, oh, we'll just delete a word if Ethan keeps pressing it. Just, you can hear all these phrases that you do have to kind of be ready to have your say.
Yeah. And I think that can be definitely one of the biggest barriers as a speech therapist, as a parent, as anyone working with AAC. There's still so much for this world to know about inclusion and acceptance and alternate forms of communication, that I also feel like that challenge alone is really hard for a lot of families to undertake, because not only are you learning a new language, you're also constantly advocating for that new language across really all settings, and that it's a lot of work. It's mentally exhausting.
Yeah, it can be. So I think kind of once you start knowing that you are now a sort of advocate for it, and just kind of wearing that proudly, I think is important. And then just kind of, obviously, once you start using AAC and start having some successes, so you'll be able to advocate for that more. So, for example, the sort of the myth around, you know, they should be pointing first, they should be able to make choices, they should be able to use picture cards. Ethan, for example, if we held up two of his favourite foods and said, Ethan, do you want, you know, melty sticks or a chocolate bar? 9 times out of 10, he wouldn't be able to choose. If we show him on now he's got his AAC, say, do you want melty sticks or a chocolate bar? He'll choose instantly which one he wants. So he's pointing, he's choosing. And that just shows that if we might have been waiting forever, sort of thing, for Ethan to point at his crisps that he wanted. You know, Ethan did actually lose the ability to point sort of at a year old, 18 months. But he's doing it all day, every day now. He's pointing at his AAC, and actually he points more now from his AAC. Obviously the AAC can teach so much. Yeah, and you and I have talked about this offline, but that's kind of my philosophy on so many of these myths, that we can teach all of them while we're providing this access to really robust communication. I can
you can support pointing with an AAC device. There's no reason that you need to prove to anybody that you can point before you can touch a device. It's just, it's actually like, when you say it like that, it's like, really? That's why we're not giving them access to a lot of language, because they can't point at something, but yet they can access a tablet or access YouTube. So really, like, reframing those are super, super important. And I love that example you gave of his choicing. And I think that's really cool that AAC totally bridged that gap for you guys. So switching to some of those more positive things, what have you guys found to be the most rewarding? I mean, you've already shared so much with us that it clearly has made a huge, huge difference in your life. But could you share a little more too?
So as I said, and I've got so many more sort of successes and rewarding situations. Introducing AAC has literally been the best thing we've ever done. And Ethan amazes us sort of every day with, his memory, what he presses, sometimes pressing kind of 4 or 5 different buttons to get to places. But I think overarching, just the most rewarding thing is just being able to honour and respect sort of Ethan's communication, so he can tell us things and we can act on it. And I think that's just so important. And you literally saw sort of the penny drop, or you saw Ethan's face change. And his, the first thing we had was Ethan told us he wanted sausage pasta for tea, and that was our first success. He hit kind of it's time for dinner, which we'd added because that's something that we always say. And then he chose sausage pasta, and you could see him realizing, hang on a minute, I just chose that and now I'm eating sausage pasta. This works. This is amazing.
That's awesome.
And just, me and my partner had a bit of a discussion about this the other day, and just how important it is as a sort of 4 or 5 year old when he wants sausage pasta and bubbles, us honouring that. But also in the future, when he's 13 and he's a slightly grumpy teenager maybe, and he wants some space, or he wants to tell us that he's feeling a bit grumpy, or, how I feel like AAC actually gets more powerful sort of with time as well. And we've just been able to give Ethan a voice. So he'll press things like sort of let's go outside, if he can't open the door. We've added lots of his kind of favourite sort of phrases to kind of make it fun and to keep it interesting. So he loves Bing, loves him more than anything else. And there's a few things that they say, bye-bye and see you soon. And so we've added them to the greetings bit. So he loves pressing them, and he presses them, to say bye. But you can see him smiling to himself because he recognises it from Bing. And we also kind of use it to sing songs, and he picks certain songs, and then we press the relevant buttons. And actually, I listened to your episode with, I think, Shelley, the AAC music therapist.
Oh, yeah.
I just found that so interesting. And actually, I'm going to do lots of the things you discussed, because Ethan just loves music, and we've added all his favourite songs on it for him to press. But sort of lastly, really, if it's okay if I keep going.
Absolutely, go for it.
So one thing, he's been able to show us how clever he is and how he knows so much with like numbers and colours and shapes. So it's kind of given us some info there. But lastly is just, I always say that AAC has been sort of life-changing for him, but also sort of potentially life-saving. So a couple of examples so Ethan can use it now to sort of advocate for himself. So sometimes we've been in a situation and he's had enough, and he would press home, or he'd press let's go to the car. Also, and sort of this happened sort of fairly early on, it sort of totally amazed us, but he could tell us that he was feeling poorly. We've got a sort of mummy kiss it better button. I think as most people also think that your kiss cures everything. So he can press that. We've even used a sort of body parts button, and he's been able to tell us that his ear hurt. And just how huge that is for him to be able to communicate all of that with us. And just, it's so much more than just, obviously it's lovely being able to give him what he wants for dinner, but actually it's so much more than that kind of in Ethan's life. So it's just been incredible, really.
Oh my goodness, so many positive things. And I want to go back and highlight a few of them because I think they're really unique, not even unique perspectives. I just like the way that you phrased it, but that life-saving piece is really, really important, right? Our kids that don't have access to that verbal language need to have an ability to advocate for themselves and need to have an ability to tell us when something's wrong. And that's the power of AAC. AAC can provide that opportunity for you. And like you said, it's great to give you your favorite food. That's equally as exciting. Yeah. But as a parent, to know what's wrong with your kid and be able to help without guessing, I can only imagine how huge that is. I mean, I just think so when the girls were super little, my girls were super little, and you had no idea and you were just constantly guessing. And it's so frustrating as a parent to not know what's wrong and know you need to help, but not know how to help.
Yeah, and so frustrating, obviously, for them as well.
Yeah.
And we've had hundreds probably of instances now where you can see things getting frustrated, and we can sort of say, show me or what's wrong or whatever, and show him his AAC. And it's often he'll just press water and you're like, oh God, where's our drinks bottle? We haven't given, and just that's so. And otherwise, he'd have been getting kind of thirstier and thirstier. He might have been home thinking, what went wrong? And all he needed was a drink, sort of thing. But he can now tell us that, which is so simple and not simple, sort of at the same time.
Yes. Oh, what a cool example. And what a perfect highlight of that. The other thing you mentioned, you mentioned a lot of wonderful things, but the other thing that I pulled out from there was the increasing with time component of it. And I think that's a really unique look at it, because you're right. He's 4. 4-year-olds only have so many problems in the world. But when you're 18, your life gets a lot more complicated and there's a lot more nuances in the world and you're navigating so much more. So the fact that you're able to build this really strong foundation so young is going to make that future component so much easier for Ethan to navigate, because he's going to have that access to language and going to understand.
Yeah. And I think, without going too kind of deep and scary into it all, that autistic, or children anyway, but autistic children and then non-speaking autistic children obviously can be so vulnerable and so many in situations, and actually just giving him that, and obviously leaving the AAC with all the buttons on and all the things, obviously not deleting anything, so he can say whatever he needs to say. That's so powerful. And we know now, so Ethan sometimes will accidentally hit a button and we know it's accidental because he's so fast on it now that I think he sometimes goes too fast almost for it. But when he presses something that he means, he looks at you and kind of looks you in the eye and does a little face. So we kind of know that as well now.
Yeah, and that goes back to that joint attention myth that exists, since we're talking all about our myths. Maybe we didn't have joint attention, but that clear, I'm going to touch this button and I'm going to look at you and you're going to know that I want what I touched, builds that piece of the puzzle that so many people say, oh, well, you have to be able to do this before you can access a device.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention is, /ask, are you guys using a combination of single words and phrases while you're modeling and navigating?
Yeah. So we've got single words, and then on some of the buttons we have got the sort of the whole phrase on there. So sort of let's go to the car, let's go outside, and sort of in time. We'd like to build it so Ethan can press sort of I want bubbles and then clear the screen and kind of do all of that. But at the moment, we just kind of got a mix of both buttons.
Yeah. And I personally am a full endorser of that. I think that's the best way to get that buy-in and that immediate wants and needs met. And it sounds like the phrases you guys have programmed in are really personal to him. They're what he wants. They're things he likes. They're things that he needs immediately. But yet you're still exploring those single buttons too. So he has exposure to that at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and we've added in, so as I said, he loves Bing. And there's a bit where there's a black cat on there and it says, "It's only Arlo, Bing." And we've got a black cat. So Ethan always goes up to her while that bit's on. So we've added that button on there and he loves pressing that. And we personalised the cat to say Otis, and which is our cat's name. So yeah, just made it sort of fun and interesting for him, which I think is sort of so important as well.
Yeah, it really is, because there's so often that I see a device get started, but that personalization piece isn't there. And it's one of the reasons that it doesn't take off for that individual kid, just because the basic vocabulary, those basic core words, especially for someone who's only 4, are not always as exciting as their favorite TV character or their cat or what they love to do on a daily basis.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've already shed some light on this advocating piece, but what have been like your biggest things you've been advocating for, and how's it going?
Yeah, so as I said, I think you naturally become a sort of AAC advocate. One of the things we've done is just firmly attached Ethan to his AAC in people's minds. So, for example, he's just started at a specialist school a few weeks ago. So at kind of all the settling in sessions, Ethan had his AAC, we had his AAC, and we're using it in front of his teachers and things like that, just so it's firmly with Ethan. And just when they think of Ethan, they can't help but think of his AAC. Also, just kind of making sure kind of when we hand over his AAC, we've told them that, to keep it accessible to Ethan at all times. We've recently had a meeting with the school just to sort of teach them a bit more and just check in and just kind of making people know that it's not going away. It's Ethan's voice. Yeah. It's what he uses. This is what he uses it for. And how successful it's been, and just kind of really making that known. So, for example, on the first day of school, he came out and his AAC was sort of in his bag. And I said, "Oh, sort of, where's his AAC?" And I think I said it nicely, and I think I kept my face nice. But the next day, it wasn't in his bag. They were holding it. So it's just, they can't put his voice in his bag. He can't reach it. He can't get to it. So just kind of things like that. And obviously keeping it all friendly and keeping it nice, because, there's no keeping it nice with his communication partners. Like, obviously there he goes to school so many hours a day, they're really key as part of this. So just kind of keeping them in the loop with it, really, and just kind of recognizing how important they are. And just making sure you share with them what's happening sort of AAC wise and what training's available. And I've offered, I only live a sort of 15-minute walk from the school. And I know teachers are busy and I probably get a strange look, but I've said I will walk up, every Thursday lunchtime or whatever, and I will kind of help you.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important. And I think keeping in mind, like you said, being kind about it, because as you mentioned earlier in the episode, they don't know anything about AAC. Like, this is their first exposure to it. So we can't expect them to know all of it just based off of like 1 or 2 meetings they've had. That ability to kind of like carefully and gently share what you see happening and what needs to change is really key.
And they're committed to learning and they're committed to training. They've said some great things, they were amazed sort of when Ethan pressed "let's go outside," so they let him go outside. They're honouring his communication. But obviously we've also had the choice, if the conversation, if Ethan presses gingerbread man or whatever, and obviously he doesn't have one at school, obviously you engage with him the same you would if he said that verbally and sort of, oh, we don't have any at school. Hopefully you've got one at home. You'll have that later. And obviously that as well, they don't need to jump at everything he says, sort of thing. Like you also need to establish that. But no, they're willing to learn, which is, all we can sort of ask for.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys really have some gems in there, because I think a lot of times in the school system, I know here, and I'm sure there too, that can be half the battle, is getting that part of the team on board. You guys could be gung-ho at home, but if school's not on board, it makes it a lot more challenging.
Yeah, and I did actually say to my partner this morning about it, like the fact that actually they don't know anything could actually be a good thing, because Ethan can show them, we can show them. Then when I've seen problems where people have had with school, it's been because school know all about another piece of software, or they have their own ideas which maybe aren't quite right. So I thought actually this morning, maybe it's really good actually the situation we're in, and we can kind of shape that, and they can learn all about Ethan's app and things like that. So yeah.
Oh, it's actually such a positive way of looking at that, because that's so accurate. There's no preconceived notions.
Yeah.
And truly, what an amazing family to learn from, because you guys are doing so many wonderful, wonderful things. Ethan is flourishing with the device, and you're doing it in an incredibly affirming way.
Well, thank you. It's been amazing, and it's so been so powerful, just giving him this voice.
Yeah. Okay, I want to switch gears to tips for everybody watching, or I guess listening. But what tips do you have for communication partners? Where do they start? What do they need to do?
So our speech therapists, and actually I'm really grateful for this tip. The first tip she said to us is just get used to taking it everywhere you go.
Yes.
So as I said, we've got a case for it. We've got a strap where I can wear it. Ethan won't sort of carry it yet. And just kind of treat it like a member of the family, really, and just take it everywhere, get used to charging it. In our case, because we were taking it everywhere, we did model and we did press buttons and we did have successes. But actually, it doesn't matter about that to start off with. Just getting used to taking it everywhere.
I love that was
so important.
Yeah, I love that that's your first one. At the time of you and I recording this, it hasn't dropped yet, but the episode right before yours talks about modeling without expectation and modeling all day long, but with the caveat of you can't do that until the device is with you all the time. So I love that was the first thing that you guys focused on.
Brilliant. And actually, that's interesting, because the second thing on my little plan is model without expectation.
Look at that.
And actually, that obviously is so important as well. We can't just expect our children to just sort of take to it straight away. And actually, you could be modeling for months, or longer, without your child kind of pressing anything, and just how important it is to do that. We tend to we verbalize when we press the buttons. Like, I don't know if that's a kind of a tip or a known thing, but we tend to do that. So we'll press we'll say more things, music, instruments, piano, and I think saying it out loud, has helped Ethan kind of remember it, and sort of remember the pathways. Something else we did right at the start, and actually I only thought about this the other day while we went into Ethan's school, but just what did we do right at the start? And something we did was just pick one thing to start off with where we'd focus on it, rather than being like, we're going to use it with everything we do, all parts of the day, including bath time, bedtime. So we just sort of didn't do that. And we started first of all with food and drink, which were Ethan's kind of biggest sort of motivators at the time. So adding all his favourite foods, he still loves a sort of baby Tino and marshmallows, and adding all of that in. And then they were therefore the sort of the first successes that we had with it. And then just kind of building up and adding things in kind of as we go a bit, really. But I think it's far too overwhelming to just almost lie to yourself that you're going to do it all the time with everything.
Yes.
And then, as I said, just kind of personalize it. So just kind of make it fun. Think kind of about your kind of daily life. So Ethan loves going out to the car. We can still just about get him in a trolley so we can go around the supermarket. He loves being in a trolley. He loves having his phone so he can go on YouTube and watch loads of number counting and things. So just adding everything that really motivates. And then, Ethan kind of picked that up then sort of incredibly quickly. And as we said, sort of surprises us. So things like pressing the sort of 4 buttons to the piano. We've got a piano at home, which he loves. But I hadn't actually modelled piano for ages. And I took it to him the other day when he was on the piano, and he just kind of did it instantly. And we use the sort of the Motor Plan 30 sort of page set where it always goes back to the home page. And so maybe kind of getting a bit of advice from a speech therapist, sort of what page set would most suit your child. But I think that idea has really worked well for Ethan, so he can kind of build up the sort of pathways to all the words. I think that's it really. But just trying not to make it this huge job and this huge chore, because we don't need another chore and job sort of in our life really. So for all of you, just sort of trying to keep it sort of interesting and fun and doable.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love all of that advice. Keeping it with you, personalizing, starting small. I think, and then that modeling without expectation for however long you need to. And I think that starting small piece, like you mentioned, almost gets glossed over by the modeling without expectation all day. Because I think people get this perception that like, oh, I'm supposed to be modeling all day long. And you get really defeated really fast when like life happens and you can't model all day long. Yeah. So that idea that you picked one thing and focused heavily on that and then added more as you got more comfortable is really, really key.
Yeah, and I think as well with that, just sort of using like your child's special interests as well. So like Ethan loves numbers, he loves the alphabet. So sort of showing him that and showing that he can do it all. And just kind of the modelling with expectation thing is all about just showing them it, saying like, look, there's numbers here, or look, there's new words here. And then they will either go to it quickly, or you might need to model it 100 times first. But just kind of showing them the scope of it, I think. Because Ethan, I'm sure, as lots of children are, whose parents are listening, he's on the go all day, every day. He's moving around all the time. We can't sit next to him and say, Ethan, sit there, let me show you all these buttons, sort of thing. You have to kind of do it on the go and quickly. But see, they're taking so much in it. And with Ethan as well, and obviously, this is an autistic trait, but in terms of like the eye contact and the joint attention, Ethan is always listening. He may not look like it. He may be running around in circles in the room, but I'm sure he's got eyes in the back of his head. He's watching what you're doing. He can hear what you're doing. So just kind of not stopping and saying, oh, they're not looking at it, they're not interested. Just keep going. They probably are taking it in.
Yeah. Oh, really, really, really good advice, because I think all of that is so crucial. I had one follow-up question to the tips. We mentioned at the beginning that you guys learning the device was part of the journey, part of the battle, like you guys figuring out where everything was on the system. Do you have any tips for families or even speech therapists or other professionals trying to learn the device on how you guys navigated that? What did you guys do to learn it?
Well, I think the biggest thing is just using it to start off with. So not putting a huge amount of pressure on yourself that you've got to be perfect when you use it with your child. If you click the wrong buttons, oh, whoopsie, do that and go back. I think you don't need to be you don't need to sit there for 2 weeks becoming fluent in it before you can start it with your child. So I think we learned it just mainly by doing it. You know, for the first evening before we introduced it, we sat there and had a look through all the buttons and pressed it, learned how to customize it and add personalization. But, you know, we didn't do that for months on end, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then I use, you know, the wonderful world of Instagram of just so many people sharing so much advice and videos and tips, and just sort of really immerse ourselves. But yeah, not waiting. You don't need to, I don't know if there is a qualification for AAC, but you don't need it, you know, to start. You know, you can just begin. And that's why that advice about just picking, say, food and drink, that helps you then as well. You think, actually, I can do that. And then next I'll add in the singing section, or next I'll add in whatever. So yeah, sort of learning it in chunks.
Yeah. Oh, we're so on the same wavelength for everything. Pretty much everything you've said. Actually, everything you have said is stuff I recommend to families on a daily basis. So it's really refreshing to hear it come back from a totally different perspective. It's not like you and I consult or anything like that. So to hear those are all the things that worked out really well for you are also affirming for me, in knowing that they can be successful for other families too.
Oh, brilliant. That's so good to know.
Yes. So I know I follow you on Instagram because everything you share is wonderful and I really enjoy it. So how can other people find you and follow along with Ethan and his AAC journey?
Yeah, so we're on Instagram. I think we are on sort of Facebook and LinkedIn and TikTok. I think we're everywhere. But Instagram is where we sort of hang out the most. And I have actually created a broadcast channel, which I've been waiting for Instagram to give me for ages. And it's just a bit of a channel really, where I can put in some top tips, I can ask people what they're struggling with, and just a bit of a area to discuss AAC. Because I'd love ultimately to do Zoom calls and do loads of things, but I just need to, as I said, I go all in, but I also need to remind myself that I work full time and I've got Ethan and I'm doing everything else. So keeping it real, but yeah.
Yeah, I feel that struggle. I go all in too, and then I'm like, I don't have time for this. So let's backtrack it until I do have time for this.
Yeah, you have to pace yourself.
Yes. Yeah. We will put your Instagram handle and any other links in the show notes, so everybody can just go click it and follow right along with you.
Perfect.
And as we wrap up, any last words of motivation for parents who are listening and starting their AAC journey?
I think if you think AAC is right for your child, to do it and to introduce it. And don't let other people tell you that it's not right for loads of the myths that we've mentioned. And actually, it may not be for everyone, but being able to just put an app on an iPad is, as simple as that really to get started. And just, don't let anyone else put you off if you think it's right.
Yeah, I love that advice. I love it. And parents can be equally as empowered as SLPs to recommend it and seek it out. Because honestly, as a parent, you know your child so much better than any of the other professionals working with your child. So really, really important. Well, Laura, this was a wonderful, wonderful episode, and I'm so happy that we were able to get on and chat. So thank you so much for joining us.
That's okay. Thank you so much. It's been so good to chat about it, because I could talk for hours about AAC, as you can probably hear. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, what an amazing episode with Laura. She is an amazing parent doing amazing things to help her son navigate his communication journey. And I'm just so excited for them. And there's so much positivity that came out of there. And we talked a lot about the myths around AAC and how, as a parent, you have to become an advocate for AAC from the start. And this idea that she had to wait until she was ready to support her son, to really give him access to that communication. So our take action step for this week is to really look at some of those myths. They're too young, they need to point, they need to have joint attention, and do a reflection personally to see if any of those are existent in your current practice. Whether you're a parent or you're a speech therapist or you're another professional looking, is there something that's stopping you from recommending AAC to certain kids or kids that don't have these prerequisites that we believe need to occur that don't need to occur? So just take some time and think through some of those myths and see if they're impacting your access to AAC. And then on that note, before you leave, a reminder, tomorrow night, October 9th, is a free masterclass talking about consistency with AAC. And I told Laura after we got off, a lot of the ideas that she shared are things we're going to talk more in depth about in this free masterclass. So if you are interested, head to the show notes and sign up so you can get your invite. And if you cannot make it, that is okay. We will have a recording for you also. So a few take action steps. Take a look at those myths, head over and follow Laura and her family's journey, and then join that free masterclass if you are looking to build some more consistency within AAC and your daily life. So with that, we will see you next week on the Take Action podcast.